and welcome to the Black and Gold Report. We are here joined by the voice of the Ohio Bobcats, Ryan Boyd. First of all, Ryan, you guys had a big sweep over number 2 ranked Robert Morris, Illinois. Can you just give us a quick recap of last weekend?
Yeah, Corey, it was a big weekend for us. The guys played really, really well, and I think that part of what happened was we started the new year, the 2013, a little bit slow. We didn't play well at Lindenwood, and we also didn't play well in game number 1 against Iowa State the next weekend. And then in game 2 against Iowa State, we trailed 4-0. And then we rallied for 8 consecutive goals just really rapidly. And I tell you what, I talked to some of the guys after that game, and they all told me that that was one of those moments, kind of a defining moment of a season, and that we would notice that it was a defining moment. And that was truly the case when Robert Morris came to town last weekend. The guys just looked like they had a bigger sense of urgency. It looked like they were playing harder, and there was a lot of impressive things that happened. The most notable thing, though, from the weekend was the penalty kill. They did not allow a single power play goal, despite the fact that they spent 20-25 minutes combined over the course of the weekend in the penalty box. And there were actually 2 different occasions during the weekend when they had to kill off 5-on-3s and pretty crucial moments. And like I said, they were absolutely perfect. So a lot of good to take out of it, but that was certainly the best thing out of the two-game sweep.
And then you guys are now 14-1-2 at the Bird. What makes it so tough for visiting teams to come in there and get wins?
I tell you what, there's a couple of things that make Bird Arena kind of a unique atmosphere. The first is something that you and I have talked about before. It's a unique environment as far as the crowd is concerned. It almost always fills up, or at least is almost full. It really doesn't matter who comes in to play us at Bird Arena, and the students around here really, really get into the hockey team, and it's a great thing because despite the fact that the club team, you may think that it may not get the respect it deserves, but the students here really love their hockey team. So, I think part of the success is certainly a testament to the crowd and how they are every night. But then the other thing that's big, Corey, and I think that you guys have noticed this in times you've been to Bird Arena, it's a smaller ice surface. It's not like many ice surfaces that you'll play on across the nation, whether it be NCAA or ACHA level. So it creates a unique environment. It's something that away teams have to get used to. And the way that our team is built, we have a lot of big physical guys that like to be involved in contact, and that really, really fits their playing style, playing on that smaller ice surface. So I think that certainly plays into the success as well.
And it's also built differently in the fact that the visiting bench and the home benches are across from each other instead of, with the penalty box kind of there and some of the other arenas that we go to, or being close to side by side as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very, very unique. And, and for any of your guys' as fans or any of your people that have never been there, when they get to tune into the broadcast and, kind of get a feel for this arena, it's definitely going to catch them off guard. It'll be a different thing to look at, a different venue to check out a hockey game. But it's fun. I mean, it's definitely not unique in a bad way. It's a cool place to enjoy hockey.
Now, looking at some of your guys here, some of the guys that always stick out are Agnew, Pillmore, Ross Tech, and I know with Tyler Pillmore, he's leading the way with 38 points, 9 goals, 29 assists. Can you just talk about those 3 guys really quickly? And before you get to that, obviously, Michael Harris with his team leading 7 power play goals. You got to think about him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Beginning with Michael Harris, he is a freshman that joined the team this year, and he's a huge, huge addition to the team. We weren't sure exactly what we'd get with Michael Harris when he first stepped onto the ice, but he's a big player. He's over 6 foot, well over 200 pounds, a big-time force. And not only does he play well right in front of the net, but if you move him out to the blue line, he has quite the slap shot from the blue line, and he's certainly terrorized some goaltenders with that. So he's certainly a guy to watch out for. He's now playing on the second line for Ohio, so you have to watch out for him. But the other 3 guys you mentioned, Corey, you got Tyler Pillmore, Nick Rostek, and also Brett Agnew. Those 3 all play on the top line for Ohio, and I got to tell you, it's an extremely dynamic line, and I know there's some great scorers in the ACHA. I know there's some great players in the ACHA in general, but those 3 guys put together one of the more formidable lines that you'll find. They all complement each other well. You look at a guy like Tyler Pillmore, he's exceptionally fast, an exceptionally good passer, and then Brett Agnew and Nick Rostek both are extremely good finishers in front of the net. They both receive the pass and score well. So
And then who's playing with Harris out there? Because I know we talked about that first line. Who's feeding him the puck?
It depends on a nightly basis.
Right.
A lot of what Dan Morris has done this year is put him out there with a couple of the older guys. You'll see him out there with, at times, it'll be Jonathan Pietromalis, sometimes Jay Mazzarella out there with him. And then other games, he's actually put him out there with some young guys. You'll see him out there with the likes of Garrett Williams and sometimes Tommy Wetzel as well. So there's been a lot of shifting around with the second and third lines for Ohio, and they're still trying to find the perfect mold, I should say, the perfect fit for some of these guys. But it's been one of those things where some weekends it works and others it's a little bit rough. So, we'll just have to see what head coach Dan Moore's kind of scripts or what he puts together this time around.
Exactly. And then I forgot to ask you this about the Robert Morris Illinois series. Who was in net for both those games? Probably the obvious answer there, but just want to get your feedback on that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Night number one, it was Fedor Dushkin who was in net. Teddy had a pretty good outing. He gave up 3 goals, and he stopped 26 of 29 shots, I believe. Teddy would be the number one netminder for our team if you were to look at a depth chart or something like that. But actually, in night number 2, we had graduate student Matt Nickno in net. He playing his first year with the Ohio Bobcats, and he saved 38 of 40 shots in night number 2. A heck of a game for him, and he's been a big X factor, a guy that we didn't really know a lot about coming in, but he's been fantastic.
Yeah, he's 8-1 with goals against 2.16. That's very impressive, and a save percentage of 90. When you're getting into that type of territory, you're doing something right in terms of goaltending wise. But that's even more impressive to see that Teddy didn't play both those games there, because I know he's one heck of a goaltender, one of the best in the league in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been huge for us. We didn't know exactly what we'd have as far as goaltending is concerned. We knew that Teddy would be back. We knew that he'd be the top guy, but there were some issues with one of our backup goaltenders a year ago, and there were some academic issues and whatever else it was. Not to get too much into that, but we didn't know who the number 2 guy would be. We had some concerns actually at that position, and I've talked to all 3 of our coaches, and they all were very, very nervous, in all honesty, about that situation. But since then they've really gotten Matt involved, and he has really stepped up, really performed well, and it's nice, as you guys know, it's nice to have a 1-2 punch, and that you don't have to rely on one guy every single night.
It's really been that way here at Oakland for a couple of years now, where there's been the one guy and then the 1A guy in terms of Matt Toder, who took the team through the national tournament last year, and then the young goaltender in Corey Hirschchuk. I mean, when you look at what he's done, he was in net against the win against Oklahoma, against Davenport last year. So for a young goaltender, he's had some impressive wins in his history here. And then obviously, of course, Matt Toder, just what he did in the tournament last year in terms of beating teams such as Adrian, Penn State, Arizona State. Those were really, really good wins for him. So it's really, you never know in terms of Oakland goaltending what you're going to get on any given night. Some nights you could have a game where you could say you want that back from either of the goaltenders, and then there's some nights where you're just blown away by how good they are. So it's going to be very interesting this weekend to see what happens here. And Oakland's had this stretch of playing a bunch of top teams here. They had some conference games that they had to play against Western and Eastern this weekend where they put up a boatload of goals, but the stretch against Adrian and then Davenport and Oklahoma, they came out of that 2-2, which for a team that's ranked 11 and that's gone through so many injuries in this season, you can't ask for much more there. But looking at the weekend series here, what's kind of your feel going into it?
I think it's going to be a really, really good series, and I know that I'm not the only one that feels that way. I've talked to head coach Dan Morris a couple of times this week, and he's well aware that Oakland's dealt with some injuries. He's well aware that they also were the same team that went to the ACHA championship a year ago, so he knows that he's going to be dealing with a good team. He's talked said a lot of good things about the coaching staff. I mean, he holistically believes that he's going to be taking on a very good Oakland team, regardless of the injury situation. And Corey, I think that I feel the same way. I know that you and I have talked numerous times about the guys that you do have, whether it be on offense or defense. One guy that I always look to is Billy Ballin. I think that he is a phenomenal passer. I think that he can score score when he needs to. But there's many guys. It's not just him. And then on defense, like you said, anytime you possess a goaltender that has taken you to the championship game, you know that he's due for a big night every once in a while, if not both nights while you guys are here. So I certainly expect a good series, and I can't wait for it, to be honest with you.
Let me just tell you, everybody out there that's listening, something is that Ryan Boyd here, the voice of the Bobcats, is always asking about Billy Ballant, and I think that might be by far his favorite player in the entire ACHA. I'm going to have to bring you a Billy Ballant autograph or something out there. Now, this will be... Now, did you see him play live at any point last year during the tournament? Did you get to check out a couple of those games?
Yeah, I got to see him play a few times. I am a big fan, I'll tell you that. I mean, I've never met the guy. I'd love to meet him and chat with him, but I appreciate good hockey, and he's a great player. He's a guy that I believe as a freshman last year, which really caught my eye. But he's awesome. Joking aside, a really, really good player, and a guy that you got to have on the scouting report, or else he's going to make you pay.
Exactly. He is one of those guys that is just a tremendous player, and just blows my mind with some of the things that he can do out there onto the ice. But defensively here for the Bobcats, what are you guys kind of rolling with here, and what can fans expect this weekend?
Yeah, when you look at the Bobcats from a defensive standpoint, the top defensive line is the one that's probably most easily highlighted. It's probably the one that does the best, and you can kind of speak to them playing with Tyler Pillmore, Nick Rostek, and Brett Agnew. Those three guys kind of work well with the two defensemen they play with. It will be Tyler Benson and also Mike Kretz will likely be the two defensemen up there on the top line. They both are young. They're both sophomores, but very, very productive, whether it be on the offensive end or on the defensive end. And then aside from that, as far as the defensemen are concerned, one guy to keep your eye on, is Jonathan Golch. Jonathan Golch has a wicked shot from the blue line. He has a number of goals scored from somewhere out in the blue line. That's where literally almost every single one of his goals and his points have come this season. And then the one other thing, Corey, that I mentioned earlier in this conversation, the penalty kill for Ohio has been exceptional lately. They have given up just one power play goal over the last 4 games. That one goal came in overtime against against Iowa State. Other than that, they have been absolutely flawless. So each defenseman that plays a part in the penalty kill has been doing their part, and that's been a big emphasis of practice. So that's certainly something to watch as well.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, one thing too is that I don't know who told me this, but the fact that you guys have some ridiculous record when allowing 3 or fewer goals, it's like 1 loss maybe or something like that. Was that a correct stat, or is that just something that someone just mistakenly told me?
No, you're on the right track with that, and unfortunately, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but yeah, there's only been one game this year that Ohio has lost, and they give up 1 goal or fewer, and that game came, or 3 goals or fewer. I'm
right.
Sorry, I'm trying to look through my notes here to see if I have the exact stat.
I think it's something like 16-1 or something, off the top of my head.
Something like that, and the only defeat came. I guess actually now, as I look through my stats here, I look through my notes, it's actually happened twice now. The second time happened against Iowa State just 2 weeks ago, but both times that Ohio has lost when giving up 3 goals or fewer, it came in a shootout or an overtime. So they have not lost in regulation this year when giving up 3 goals or fewer. So defense is certainly a huge part of the game plan, and if they can keep opponents to a low goal total, they're an extremely tough team to beat.
We're here with Ryan Boyd, the voice of the Ohio Bobcats, Oakland and Ohio from Bird Arena on Friday and Saturday. One thing, too, that I talk about a lot on road games for Oakland, talked about it when we were out at Arizona State, and that is the first 10 minutes of a hockey game, because that is when the home team can really apply the pressure, especially if it's, kind of a distance travel. I know it's about 5 or 6 hour drive, no big deal, but, what's your kind of view on that, and how do the Bobcats usually come out in those first 10 minutes?
I think that you make an absolutely pivotal point. I think that you're 100% right in what you're saying. And if you look at the Bobcats so far at home this year, when they don't start fast is when they have problems. The one game that they lost in regulation at home this year was against Minot State. They lost 7-1, and in that game, Minot State came out with a chip on their shoulder. They had lost the night before, and they just jumped on Ohio from the outset, and they were just a better team, quite frankly, and they just, really made a and Nick Rostek out there on the ice, if not to start the game, they'll be out there literally 20 or 30 seconds into the game and getting their first line in. And it's not surprising that those three guys can get a goal in their first or second shift of the game. So if you're Oakland, you got to find a way to slow those three guys down early in the contest and maybe kind of try to quiet the crowd a little bit, because if you can get the crowd out of the game, get that top line out of the game, Ohio has a lot more problems having success on offense. And if you keep us at a lower goal total, if you find a way to keep us a little bit more quiet in the building, you'll have a good chance of succeeding. So yeah, the first 10 minutes of maybe each period would be pretty pivotal.
And then just a couple more things here for you. What's kind of an unknown hero or kind of one of those X Factor type guys that Grizzlies fans should be looking out for, that will probably hear his name a lot this weekend, that when they look on the stats, his numbers don't exactly fire up out you as one of the top players?
That's a good question, and the way I'll answer that is actually the way that the way that head coach Dan Morris answered that question earlier today. I talked to him at practice, and I asked him who he thought would be an X factor in the upcoming series and who he thought could be a guy that would be a game changer. And he said it was Nathan De La Torre, who is a sophomore forward for this team, and he's not a guy that plays up on the top two lines. He's usually down on the third line, but in his freshman year, he didn't play a whole lot. There were actually games where he didn't even suit up for the game, and I know that he was frustrated about it. I know that he thought that he deserved some playing time. This year, head coach Dan Morris has given him more opportunities. He's given him more ice time, and he has really, really capitalized on it. He now has 5 goals and 10 assists so far this year, but a number of those 15 points have come over the last couple of weekends. That's the guy that slowly but surely is making his presence felt on the ice, and I think that he could be a big-time producer in this weekend if he gets a good chance.
Is there any worry from you about maybe, you had the 2 games against Robert Morris, Illinois with the sweep, and then you're playing an Oakland team that's 16 and 13 and whatever it is, I think 2 or 3 or something, and big part of it, as we've talked about a little earlier just on here, was the fact that Oakland has half the team that's been hurt for basically the entire year, and so that plays a big factor into it. But they've played Arizona State tough out there, as we talked about some of their bigger wins so far this season. What's kind of your feel about that?
I think that anytime you play a team that's in a similar boat to what Oakland is in right now, whether they be facing a lot of injuries or whether they just kind of slipped up here or there, whatever a team with a near 500 record is faced, I think that there is some concern. I think that from a broadcaster standpoint or from a media standpoint, I certainly do have my concerns. But one thing I will say is that Ohio has, in my opinion, had some problems earlier in the year in underestimating opponents. I think that one time you could see that was in game number 1 against Indiana earlier in the season. The Bobcats obviously were heavy favorites in that game, and they built a big lead, and they kind of let their foot off the gas pedal, and Indiana stormed right back and beat them in overtime. And then even a couple weeks ago, we played Lindenwood at Lindenwood, and wow, they're a big-time rival of ours. They're not having the year that they typically have, and Lindenwood swept us easily. They won both games in convincing fashion, and I don't think the guys were prepared for that weekend. But while those were tough weekends for the guys, I will say this. Dan Morris was very adamant. He was very, very thorough in explaining to the guys that he did not want to see that again. Many of the players I talked to were they were quick to tell me how angry he actually was about them, taking some of these opponents lightly. So while part of me is concerned, the other part of me believes that maybe those speeches, maybe those intense moments of practice have convinced them not to do that again, and hopefully they'll come out and take Oakland as seriously as they should be taken, because they're certainly a good team.
Oakland is 3-6 all time at the Bird, and I'll tell you, all 9 of those games have been absolutely thrilling matchups that we've seen. And what is your thoughts, your predictions, your feel for Ohio-Oakland weekend?
Man, you're putting me on the spot here. It's not easy being the Ohio broadcaster, but I see that both games, or I imagine that both games will be extremely close. I don't think we're going to see anything more than a 2-goal separation in any of the games. I think that a best case scenario for Ohio would certainly be a sweep. I think that they have the offensive and defensive firepower power to do that, and I think they proved that against Robert Morris. I think that anytime you go out there and on your home ice and beat a team like Robert Morris twice, and Corey, you know that I think that Robert Morris might be the best team in the nation.
Right.
Anytime you beat them twice in a row, I think that you have certainly have the ability to go out and sweep anybody else. So I think that Ohio can sweep Oakland, but I'll say this: I would not be surprised if the two teams split the series, because I know that Oakland's going to have a chip on their shoulder coming into the series. I know that you guys are on the pursuit to prove that some of your losses earlier in the year came because of injuries and not because you guys aren't a good hockey team. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if you guys have a big showing in one or two of the games. And while I would say that a sweep is possible, I'm certainly not going to predict that would be the outcome.
All right, Ryan, we will definitely see you down at the Bird Arena on Friday night, and we'd like to thank you for joining us here on the Black and Gold Report.
Yeah, Corey, thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing you and your team.
All right, that's Ryan Boyd, the voice of the Ohio Bobcats hockey here on the Black and Gold Report on OaklandHockey.org.